My guest this morning here on Jersey Magazine is currently a senior vice president with Morgan Stanley, but has had quite the baseball career. Michael Marchiano, good morning and welcome to WDHA and the Jersey Magazine.
Thank you, Jim. Great to be here, and I love your show, and happy to be here this morning.
And let me give you a little background on Mike. Born in Brooklyn, went to high school here in New Jersey, Jefferson Township, earned a scholarship to Fordham University. He's in the Hall of Fame at Fordham. How many records do you still hold up there?
I'm not sure, but I hope, thank God they're still standing, batting average, home runs, etc. It was a good, it was a fun time, and I'm just glad, to see a lot of those records still standing.
And then drafted by the Seattle Mariners in 1997, where he played for a couple of seasons. But the reason I wanted to talk to Mike this morning, we just finished with the World Baseball Classic, and I mean, just an incredible tournament. And you had the experience of playing in Italy. How did that all come about?
So great topic, Jim. At the end of my career, I spent 4 or 5 years in the Seattle organization. I had a chance towards the later end of my career after I was hurt and released to have the chance to play overseas. And I was lucky enough to give the opportunity to play on the Italian national team based on my heritage of my grandparents and great-grandparents. And it was wonderful. We played with a bunch of great guys, and the team was a split of mostly Italian Americans and Italian-born players, and it was a great experience.
How was the game different in Italy from over here in the United States?
So it's different in the fact that many European teams and even teams in the Far East, they have their individual leagues that are set up, and they break it down more like what we would see when we watch soccer on television. So they call it Series A, Series B, Series C. So the top teams play in a division, and at the end of the season, typically what happens is when they go to form a national team, they'll look to get players from Italy, and then whenever they can't fill the void from Italy, they'll look for the minor leagues in America, major league talent, et cetera, to fill the rosters. That all comes together on what's called a national team, and you play for the country. That's why when you look at the World Baseball Classic, you'll see some guys maybe that you might know not have Italian heritage or Australian heritage, et cetera. For instance, Matt Harvey played on the Italian national team this year. So when it all comes together, it's more regarding your descendants and where you came from, and then the teams get organized accordingly.
How was the language barrier for you?
It wasn't too bad. Mostly internationally, and everyone kind of speaks English. I did have to do a couple interviews in Italian that didn't go over too well. Those weren't as bad as sometimes the reporters that ask you to comment. Whether it be in Taiwan or Japan, that obviously you would need a translator.
Back in 2001, one of the predecessors of the World Baseball Classic, the World Baseball Cup, you played for Italy. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. Looking back and watching the games on television now. So we had to qualify through the European bracket. So the European bracket consists of some great teams. Like, for instance, the Netherlands usually has a great team where you have to beat and get into the tournament. Don't people forget that the Netherlands also have players from the Dutch Antilles Islands down in, guys like Andrew Jones, and we'll go back and play for the Holland national team. So we started off in Japan we played at the Oryx Blue Wave, which, a former teammate of mine, Ichiro, was, obviously a god over there. So we started off with a preliminary series in Japan for a couple weeks, and then wound up in Taipei and Kaohsiung, Taiwan, playing in the Far East in the World Cup with some of the best teams in the world, and it was it's a phenomenal experience for anyone.
I know that Met fans have maybe a slightly different take than many other fans around the world on what happened with Edwin Diaz, but it's the excitement generated by this, Mike. This entire tournament has been really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, speaking, me. Talking to a lot of players daily, I will say this: players that are playing in this World Cup and the World Baseball Classic, it means a lot to them. And you see the interviews, that many of the players are saying, from Mike Trout down to Pete Alonso, they love playing for the country. They'll do this. I will go out of a limb and say that a lot of the players like playing in tournaments like this over the regular season. The The fans and the stadiums are electric, and I have never experienced a louder crowd playing baseball than what you see in Japan and Taiwan. Taiwan specifically, they're cheering the whole game, and it's just a great environment for any player to be in.
Watching the reaction when Shohei Ohtani does anything is incredible. The Japanese fans just love him. He's amazing.
Yeah, they take their baseball seriously from little league on down, and really anywhere in the world. If you look at some of these teams, the level of baseball that's being played from a young age right now, even in Italy, there's camps going on for 8, 9-year-old kids like we see in America. Obviously, when you have a manager like Mike Piazza managing the Italian team, and I know for the last couple of years they've made trips throughout Italy supporting the game through Major League Baseball. I mean, Australia, Japan, obviously the Latin countries, Taiwan. Baseball is taken so seriously, and I will say, outside of the World Cup for soccer, I mean, the fans and the amount of people watching these games worldwide is unbelievable.
What's your take on like the best place to play internationally from your experience?
There's a couple great places. I never had a chance to play in Cuba at the time. We weren't allowed to play there because we had American citizens on the team, so I never got a chance to play in Cuba. But Japan was unbelievable. Taiwan, Taipei, Taiwan, that crowd, many of those players, they grew up playing together. You'll see them in the Little League World Series in Williamsport. Many of those players go on to play for the national team, and trying to win an environment like that in Taiwan is very, very difficult for any team.
Now, you and I have grown up watching baseball, and it's always been called America's pastime. But what's your take on the way the game has grown internationally, especially, you watch it through this, but what's your take on that, having played both here in the United States as well as overseas?
I think with the networks right now, MLB Network, direct TV streaming, some of the YouTube stuff, kids are getting to see the game more and more. Like when I lived overseas, I had direct TV. I was able to watch. Many people couldn't watch a game unless it was a playoff game, etc. Now the availability to watch games online, kids growing up around the game, it's electric. Major League Baseball realizes the power of obviously throughout the Latin American countries, the demand has always been in there in the Far East. But when you're getting countries like Italy, the Netherlands, Australia, baseball's huge in Australia, the leagues that go on, and the amount of talent that are coming from these teams. And, when you look at the Major League draft and how players are signing free agency and around the world, I mean, it's really an international game right now. It's basically becoming like basketball. Basketball players are coming from all over the world and playing at a young level. But now we've always seen the talent come from the Latin American countries, Dominican Republic, Venezuela, Puerto Rico. But now you're even seeing, look at Mexico, got really far in this tournament. I mean, teams are really producing some unbelievable players, and as you can see, these players want to go back now and play for their countries where their ancestry's from.
You mentioned basketball, and our alma mater, Fordham. There's a player from Ukraine who was on that team. They've grown that program incredibly internationally. It was such a delight to watch how deep they got this year.
Yeah, I mean, we watched every game. My daughter actually cried when they lost in the Atlantic tournament. So that's how much they had an impact on people. But you're right. I mean, college programs, everyone's recruiting internationally, not even national anymore. Programs in the Northeast, down South, they're looking at talent from everywhere. And it used to be that players would just come to America, for instance, in baseball, maybe spend a year at a junior college and enter the draft. But now colleges, for instance, are taking players from other countries. And look, you're seeing, the nationalities for some of these players now that they're going back to play on these teams. It's great. I saw, a fellow alumni, Nick Martinez, playing for the USA team. There's another gentleman from Fordham. He played for the one of the other European teams. So I forget the name of the Czech Republic. He played it and started. So you're getting players that go back and play for different teams, and I just think it's great when that all comes together.
That Czech Republic team this year had like a cult following. It was pretty cool to watch. I mean, even Ohtani got into it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you'd be surprised. Most of the European teams will have people that do other jobs and will play for, for other teams. I know, for instance, the Australian national team, most of those players as well have jobs. If they're not playing in America, they have some players that are playing in Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and then they come back. But then you got some players that they might have a normal job and still have the ability to play at a high level.
Mike Marchiano is my guest this morning on Jersey Magazine. He's currently a senior vice president with Morgan Stanley here in Morristown, but had quite a baseball career, both high school, college at Fordham in the Seattle Mariners system, and playing internationally as well. We are going to see some new rules changes this year, and the one that intrigues me the most is the pitch clock. I really, really like it. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
Well, I was heavily involved. A good friend of mine, Joe Martinez from New Jersey, works for Major League Baseball, and he was in charge of rolling that out for all the reporters on MLB.com. So I got an early sense of what's going on. The pitch clock, obviously, it changes the game a little bit on how to get in the box, how to, players were taking a long time adjusting batting gloves, calling timeout, etc. But the pitcher will have the biggest advantage when it comes to the pitch clock, because the batter is going to be focusing on the pitcher. It's hard to focus on the pitcher and look over your right or left hand shoulder and see how much time is left. But all the rules, we're in an age where everybody wants something fast, and baseball was a game that was not fast. It was slow. Players running out between innings, stuff going on between innings, the pitch clock, getting in the box. So I think this is going to help out a lot. Along with the shift that was happening with players in the infield. But I do believe that it's going to help the game in the long run. Hopefully they're not as strict when it comes to these rules, but from the looks of things during spring training, it seems like they are.
I found for the most part, there's only one or two games that I watched where you could see the actual clock. And if you don't see it, I don't think it's really in the back of your head, but you just notice that the pace is a little quicker. And that's what I think the problem was. It wasn't the length of the game so much as, Noma with, out of the box, adjusting this, that, and the other thing. In fact, when David Ortiz retired, his first year afterwards, he was, I think, doing a game for Fox. And one of his comments was, my gosh, it's taking way too long in here. Let's go.
Well, you're gonna see pitchers like a Max Scherzer, right? They know how to manipulate the batters when they come in, and really, if you see, they'll take time, they'll pause, they'll get off the rubber, they'll try to get batters in a disadvantage, because the worst thing that could happen as a batter is when you get in there and you're locked in and you're ready to go and you're ready to swing, and the pitcher's delaying, right? They're delaying, they're just holding the ball at the mound. Typically, after a couple seconds, a batter would say, hey, timeout. I got to readjust here. I can't sit here for another 5 or 6 seconds before the pitcher does anything. And if you noticed in spring training, many of the veteran pitchers are coming to a stop. They're stepping off and really trying to toy with the batters a little bit.
I'm glad they instituted this in spring training to at least give everybody a little bit of a chance to figure it out before we start with opening day, which is just around the corner.
Really, the big thing is going to be the bases. I mean, anyone with any kind of speed and base stealer, when you have a larger base that you're now going to be able to lead from and steal, it's incredible. It is a big difference when you have a fast guy, that's a base stealer. Their momentum is clearly going to be to take the biggest lead possible, because when they reach and stretch for the bag, when a throw comes over to first, the pitcher, now they can only throw over a couple times from what I understand. So you're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple guys this year steal a lot of bases in the big leagues.
I want to go back to Fordham for just a second. I'm sure you've seen the news that Fordham baseball and softball games are going to be on the MSG network, which I think is great, not just for Fordham athletics, but for local area fans as well. The idea you watching a Fairleigh Dickinson get deep into the tournament, the NCAA basketball tournament, Princeton making a deep run. And now you're going to be able to see more of a local college on TV without having to get behind a paywall.
Yeah, I mean, for all of the local schools that are playing, I mean, it seems like Seton Hall, St. John's, Fordham have the biggest national. I mean, when you look at the rosters of these teams, they went from recruiting from a regional basis. Now you're seeing players on teams from California, Texas, Oregon, Florida, et cetera. So these have become national rosters. The transfer portal has really meant a lot for these schools. And, for a school like Fordham, one of the top academic schools to have players come from all over the country and now have the ability to play on TV, maybe not on the SEC network or ACC network, et cetera, but they're going to see some great opportunities for recruiting. Kevin Layton does a tremendous job over there. He's one of the best coaches, I think, around college baseball wise. And the softball program, I'm a girl dad, so I have two daughters, me and Ella, and hopefully they get a chance to play softball in college one day. But that program has been tremendous, and the girls in the area nationally that are playing, I've become a fan of softball a little bit just watching these players. They're tremendous athletes, and I will say, hitting a ball from 40 feet instead of 60 feet in 6 inches is very difficult as well. So.
Yes, it is. How are you managing to keep in the sports world these days through Morgan Stanley?
So I'm in the global sports entertainment division here. So we focus on a lot of athletes, entertainers that we help, throughout their careers and get ready for retirement. So it keeps me involved specifically on the NFL, Major League Baseball front, dealing with players and helping them get to a point where, obviously you see these contracts that are going on and really help players get to the point where they can retire and focus on the field while their contracts and money's coming in.
Mike Marchiano, Senior Vice President from Morgan Stanley here in Morristown. It's been great talking baseball and other stuff with you this morning here on the Jersey Magazine. I really thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim.